The topic of Summer 25 in Zinal is very important according to me, because during the exposition of yoga teaching in the Yoga Sutra, it is the first proposal, as Luc said or mentioned. And it's actually the first proposal because later on there will be many others in the first chapter, and also in the same with the same strength in the second chapter. But since it is the first, I think it has a very an importance that is to be stressed. And if you remember, the definition of yoga by Patanjali is in two sutras in the first chapter. Sutra 2 of the first chapter, Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. The state of yoga is a state in which the functioning, endless functioning of our minds come to a stop. And the Sutra 3, Tada Drashtuhu Swarupe Avastanam. Then that which really sees establish itself in its real nature, which implies that that which sees within each one of us is not in its proper place and not seen as it is, as the subject of all experiences. So when we look at ourselves and we ask the question, who is the subject of all experiences? The immediate answer is me. And there is half truth in this statement and half falseness. The half truth is that within ourselves, the seer, or that which sees, is everlastingly present. Even when this body dies, or before this body was born, the seer was already and will still be after the death the real subject of all experiences. But from birth to death, for most human beings, we believe that me is the subject, and this me is the psychological creation of what Patanjali calls chitta, that which looks like conscious, something that seems to have the capacity to be conscious. So the first proposal is said in two words that are linked in a way that means they should not be separated. Abhyāsa, Vairāgya, Bhyām. The suffix Bhyām in Sanskrit indicates something that does not exist in the modern language, or at least maybe in most of them, and maybe some have this, not only the singular and the plural, but also the dual. Dual means two things that are so intensely joined that you cannot separate them. So it is not Abhyāsa and Vairāgya, or Abhyāsa or Vairāgya, or Abhyāsa more than Vairāgya. It is the two together with the same intensity that is meant by this choice of Patanjali to use the dual case, or rather dual number. So far, is it clear for everyone what I have been saying? No question? So I will talk each separately, but you have to understand that you cannot separate them. Abhyāsa, if I look at the etymology, is built on a verb the verb as, not the verb as meaning sitting like in asana. The verb as, which means sitting, is derived from the verb as, which means to be, but not the being in movement who is obliged to be in contact with a changeless set of experiences, whether positive or negative. That verb is the verb bu, which implies a being which is ceaselessly confronted to change, which is the case of the psychological entity which calls itself me, but it implies to be everlastingly with no beginning and no end. And Abhi has two meanings. It's a prefix. It means a movement or a move towards. And it also means a movement against. So Abhyāsa means at the same time a movement towards the ceaseless eternal being, and at the same time a resistance against it, because the psychological entity wants to survive at any cost and fears the movement back to its source or to its beginning or to its origin, rather, which is the state of being which has no beginning and no end, about which the Bhagavad Gita, for instance, speaks, or also the Vedanta, the Vedas. So that is the etymological meaning. Now, if you look in the dictionary, Sanskrit dictionary, Abhyasa is translated as habit, something that comes through repetition. And we will see with the following sutra about Abhyasa how repetition can be essential in yoga. I am going to move to the second term, Vairāgya, unless you have questions about this first explanation about Abhyasa before going to Vairāgya. Is it clear what I said so far to everyone? Okay. Vairāgya, if I look at the etymology, is the word raga, which comes from the root ranch, which means to color in red. It is used, for instance, in the South Indian and North Indian music, the ragas, to express the emotional coloring of the music. Some music makes you sad, some music makes you joyful, or thoughtful, or oblivion of everything else than the music. And this is due to the combination of notes that creates a peculiar raga. In the yoga field, you know that term if you have studied the second chapter of Yoga Sutra, because it is one of the so-called kleshas, factors of suffering within the human being. And it speaks about desire, inclination, and Patanjali explains it as the result of wanting to experiment again something that has been very pleasant in one's life. So it is a process of repetition due to the desire to reproduce a situation or know again an experience that has been so pleasant that it has left a mark in the psyche, in the mind. And The opposite is dvesha, aversion, disgust. And very strangely, in a way, if you look in the dictionary, Sanskrit dictionary, Vairāgya is translated as disgust and aversion. But the etymology means something a bit different. There is raga, there is the desire to reproduce a positive experience. Viraga means no such desire, and Vairagya means an intense negation of any desire. So there is a difference between not wanting and disgust. So after explaining the two words, I come back to the sutra. It is through the perfect combination of Abhyāsa and Vairāgya that the chitta vrittis, the movements of the mind, nirodha, can be stopped. We can ask ourselves, is it a definite stoppage or a momentary stoppage? This can be discussed later on in the first chapter, but the point is that the state of yoga is a moment when the past, under the form of memory, under the form of thinking, and under the form of the psychological entity which is made of memories, stop. And then there is only the seeing, the immediate, instantaneous seeing of whatever happens around that which sees. If we look, what happens as experience? As experience, we know bodily sensations. As experience, we have information through the senses. As experience, we have the content of our own mind. Some of it obvious, some of it hidden, and the hidden parts, they come only through either dreams or some form of investigation to find out the hidden parts of our mind. What Patanjali in the second chapter called the karma ashaya, the reservoir, the tank of actions that have been experimented previously, and some of them are completely not only forgotten, but are forbidden because they are so uncomfortable that we don't want to see them, and to see them without preparation could be very hurtful. Now we are going to proceed, unless you have questions, with what Patanjali says first about this abhyasa, this habit. He says, Tatra stitau yatnaha abhyasaha. Abhyasa, the habit. Yatnaha is an effort. It is something that demands some strength because it is not going to happen otherwise. So abhyasa is an effort. Stitau, in the direction of stability. Stitau is the locative case, that means in the direction or with regards to stability, sthiti. The root of sthiti is ta, to remain stable. there is no explanation from Patanjali about the meaning of this stability. So we have to resort to what Vyasa says about what is sthiti. He says, absence of riches, fluctuations of the mind, or in undisturbed calmness of the mind is called sthiti or tranquility. It is not the immobility of the body, because the body can be perfectly motionless, but the mind is still going on. The body can be very active, but the mind can be silent. So it is not a question of the body, sthiti, even if it is a quality of the body that can be developed through asana, but it is essentially the undisturbed calmness of the mind. So c'est Vyasa. Now, if we look into our daily living, we can see how others, our society, our information, news, create disturbances in the mind. And we may see, if we look a little carefully, our own story, past events, past wounds, in a kind of dialogue with the external world, create also disturbances of the mind. So the undisturbed calmness of the mind is important, essential, but so difficult state to reach. And that is why Patanjali says the sutra, the following sutra, which is the 14th, Satu Dirghakala Nairantarya I start with these two, but this let us call it practice for the time being, has to be done in a way that knows no break, a continuous effort to reach that state of undisturbed calmness. And it has to be done continuously for a long period of time, dirghakala, a long period of time. It means that it is a process that is meant to erase something within us that has been put in time, not only since our birth, but maybe since the beginning of human kind or species, or maybe even since the beginning of life. As you may know, if you have studied the philosophy of yoga and its origin, the philosophy of Sankhya, that which creates this constant movement of change called prakriti, that which creates forms. This prakriti is an endless movement of fighting between the three fundamental energies of nature: sattva, which is kind of balance; rajas, which is the energy of change; and tamas, which is the energy of inertia. So our minds, our bodies, and the world around us is the kshetra, the field, through which these three energies fight continuously and create and provoke change. How to keep a silent, balanced, undisturbed mind within this field of battle, this field of fight, this field of stress, this field of conflict. Though the practice has to be continued constantly for a long time. And this is also what says the sutra, without break, no interruption. And this must be done with a form of devotion or respect, not just because we want to achieve a result, but because we have understood how fundamental it is for us to come to that in undisturbed state of mind, not only as a separate entity which we believe to be, but for the totality of the universe, because the universe is as I say, the field of fighting between these three gunas, these three energies, and the Rajasic energy is very prevalent, the Tamasic energy is very prevalent, the Sattvic energy is more difficult to reach, and the more individual, so-called individuals could reach this Sattvic state of undisturbed mind, the better for the whole. It will balance the other energies. If this is respected this way, continuous, constant, for a long time and without break, and with respect or devotion, this Abhyāsa will be rooted. It will be rooted. It will become part of our life and not be disturbed by anything. So I may proceed to Vairāgya unless you have some questions about this. No question? Okay. Well, maybe I will stay a little longer with Abhyāsa before I go to the next thing. My own practice and experience has shown me that no practice, whichever you call practice, whatever you call practice, will last if it is done through will. If it is done through a goal, if you want to achieve something, this will be a failure. Practice will succeed only if you have a deep understanding that life has meaning only if you create some form of order within yourself. If you don't want to be kidnapped by the general disorder around yourselves, you have to create an order within, and this order can come only if you have understood its importance. It is a priority. If you don't have that as a priority in your life, if your priority is your children or your job, or teaching yoga, or studying yoga, or pretending to be a yogi, or whatever else you want to choose as the main reason of your life, practice will not be accomplished in the way Patanjali suggests. It's only through the understanding of the importance of the order within oneself. What does it mean, order within oneself? On one level, it means order within the body. The body is the wisest dimension to take care of itself. not the mind, not knowledge, not medicine, whether Ayurvedic or homeopathic or allopathic or whichever, Chinese. It's not the outside that can create order in the body. It is the body that can create order within itself, provided that which called the mind accepts to listen to the inklings that the body gives constantly. If we are in a state of listening to its messages, and also the messages of the dream. That means the unconscious part of the mind is in relationship, a very narrow relationship or close relationship with the body. So it is through listening that we may understand the needs, the right actions for the body, not too much, not too little, as says the Bhagavad Gita. Not too much of exercise, not too little. Not too much of food, not too little. Not too much of sleep, not too little, and so on and so on. This balance is part of the order that one has to, not to create, but to discover through listening to the body, which includes the senses. As for the order in the mind can be said to have two functions. One is to operate in the world in which we live, and this operation, if it is only to our own advantage, as this person that believes to be separate from the rest of the universe, this will not create order. It creates disorder constantly. It creates battle within the couple, within the family, within the city, within the nation, and within the world in its totality. So the right action of the mind has to be done not from the point of view of the separate entity, but from the understanding that this body-mind is part of the total universe, is in relation with the total universe, and the total universe informs this body-mind constantly. Again, it is a question of listening, to be related to what happens, not only within oneself, but also with regard to the external world, in spite of the fact that for some people it is very stressful because of the nature of the informations that are thwarted most of the time, but still one has to be listening to the world, not only listening to one's own mind and body. Then there is a chance, I don't know how to pronounce, to come to what Patanjali says, ruta, the right action, which has been, this word rita in Sanskrit has come to mean rite in French. I don't know in English how you say rite, rituals, but the original meaning is an action in accordance with the totality of the universe. This is the real order that may have to come before our minds stop to be functioning on the level of egotistic point of view. So this understanding only will create the proper type of relationship with practice. You have to practice without even thinking that you are practicing. Practice has to become like a part of your reality, not separate from you. the same way as you don't separate yourself from the fact of eating or drinking or sleeping, the action called practice is part of yourself totally. Then there is no question of how and when or what for. It has become part of your being. It is only then that the way Patanjali defines practice is possible, according to me. Maybe I'm wrong. The second word, Vairāgya, as I say. Yes.
May I ask something?
Yes.
You said the practice has to become part of you totally.
Yes.
How do you achieve that? How do you come to that?
True understanding. Through seeing that it is a fundamental issue. If you don't practice in the sense of Patanjali, what he says, a constant effort towards mind being silent or tranquil. I use the word a tranquil flow of mind, an undisturbed calmness of the mind, unless you have understood the foremost importance of that quietness, you cannot really go for it. So,
and how do you come to this understanding? Not by reading books.
No, yeah. By seeing how the disturbed state of mind is the cause of suffering. Like, let us say my wife goes away with somebody else. That's a fact. What is creating the suffering? Not the fact, but all the projections and imaginations and fears that go with a disturbed mind, a mind that is not at peace, a mind that is not silent, because the mind can never be at peace in its movement. It can only be at peace when it is silent. Not silent in the way of driving a car, which is a mind activity, not only a body activity, not silent in the fact of speaking a language, but silent psychologically. Silent about what makes suffering within each one of us. So that silence of the mind cannot be achieved through will, cannot be achieved through means. It can be achieved only through the understanding of the importance of the silence of the mind when you see that it is the mind that creates suffering.
So that would be by observing the mind, and that means it is by meditation, isn't it?
I would say if you call meditation attention or awareness in English, yes. As a wise man I love very much, who is not Krishnamurti for once. Usually I mention Krishnamurti, but here I mention Nisargadatta Maharaj. He says, awareness is the mother of understanding, of intelligence. Awareness is the mother of intelligence. That means to understand deeply the importance of the silence of the mind, you have to be aware of the havoc and chaos that the mind creates. Not the mind of the scientist that observes and learns from observation, not the mind of a technician that creates a new machine, but the psychological mind that is explained by Patanjali as the mind rooted in the kleshas. The first klesha is asmita, which means the false sense of me as the subject. Have I answered your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So I proceed with Vairāgya. Translated in dictionary by disgust or aversion. Now, the sutra that defines Vairāgya is the, sorry, I've moved too fast, is the number 15. Just a second. Oops. I changed my book because I cannot read. It is too small. So, the 15 says in Sanskrit, Drishta Anushravika Vishaya Vitrushnasya Vashikara Samnya Vairagyam. I am not going to translate now Vairagya as disgust, but as disinterest for worldly matters, which is actually the meaning that most good translators give to that term in English. Or also a state of utter desirelessness. So if I see each word, Vairagyam is vitrushnasya. Trushna means thirst, to be thirsty. So it is a way of speaking about desire in a very concrete way. When you are thirsty, I start being thirsty from talking so much. When you are thirsty, at one moment you cannot resist. You have to drink. The body says, I need to drink. So it is a desire which is impelling, which is very strong, Trishna. And Vitrishna means absence of such thirst. Absence of thirst for what? For Vishaya. Vishaya means objects in a very abstract way, all objects. And Patanjali give a precision, Drishta Vishaya. Objects perceived through the senses. He says seen, because the eye is the most impressive, unless you are blind, most impressive source of information for human beings. And today, even more so with videos and visuals and screens and so on, smartphones, etc. But it means all sense perceptions. Whether you see, whether you hear, whether you taste, whether you smell, whether you touch, all sense perceptions give what is called information about Vishaya, objects, qualified by the word Drishta. And then also Anushravika Vishaya, objects that you have heard about. You have heard about an undisturbed state of mind. Your mind is very disturbed, and you so much want to reach or acquire the state of undisturbed mind. That is an Anushravika Vishaya. It is an object that you have heard about and which can be the source of a very strong thirst, like enlightenment, like moksha, liberation. Like Kaivalyam in the Yoga Sutra, the inner sense of solitude that is used by Patanjali to define the ultimate state of yoga and so on. Or simply the possibility of reaching in asana this perfect combination of sthira-sukha, total vigilance, and complete ease at the same time. Anything that you have heard about can be source of thirst, of desire. And such a thirst, such a desire is not Vairāgya. It is something that impels you to continue to move in the direction of satisfying this desire. And therefore, it creates a field of energy in which your mind cannot be silent because it is active trying to reach a goal. And trying to reach a goal is in total contradiction with the possibility of the mind being silent. So no goal. How is it possible? It is paradoxical. Yoga offers the picture of a human being free from suffering, free from the past, free from beliefs, a human being able to understand the deepest mysteries of life, a human being in which consciousness has been revealed as it is, a space, dimensionless space, limitless space, free from time, free from beginning and from ending. This is so it's something so desirable. How to come to it without desire? This is the paradox and the difficulty that Patanjali stressed right from the beginning. It is like a picture of something with an arrow indicating the direction to reach that picture. And at the same time, the warning, the picture is not the thing. The arrow is misleading. You cannot reach that way. You have to find a way which is not understandable by the mind. You have to find a way which is your own. There is no way that can be repeated. The Buddha's way is Buddha's way. The Christ way is Christ's way. The yogi, whichever name you want to give to that yogi, is that yogi's name. And each one of us has to find our own path. All paths are good, but only one is good for myself. It is my path, or your path for you. And this path is not written in a book. And I doubt that a human being can say to another human being, this is your path. It can help to eliminate some obstacles, but you have to discover your own path. That is the interesting part of the story. If you want to buy, I don't know, a tape recorder, a laptop, you can ask advice from friends or ask advice from specialists, and they will say, you need to do this and this and that with your laptop. Okay, the best brand for you is this one. But to believe that somebody will tell you the best yoga for you, the best way to yoga for you is this, is misleading. You have to discover it by yourself. So I suppose you are going to ask me how to discover it by yourself. Again, it is the same question as you asked a little time before, Osman, sorry. You have to read books, you have to come close to people that have a teaching that seems important for you. You have to listen and you have to see, this is not for me, this is for me. Yes, this I agree, it resonates in my heart. Well, it's not the brain, it's not the mind that are guides that will help us to define what is our path. It is our heart, the sensitive part of our being that says yes or no. Yes, maybe, or yes, absolutely. No, maybe, or no, absolutely. I can tell you a short story, but unless you are bored with me. Long ago, when Gérard Bliss was alive, one day he calls me and he says, François, I know you are deeply interested by yoga, and there is a very famous master from India, from the school called, or school is not the right word, the tradition called Siddha Yoga, Swami Muktananda, who is coming to France, and I organize, moi, Gérard Blitz, a session with him in the disaffected church. If you want, you can come. Oh, I said, yes, I will come. To make the story short, after a week spending time in the ashram that was linked with Muktananda, I went to that church, and Muktananda started giving his teachings. And the main aspect of his teaching was what he called Shaktipat, the transmission of energy. So we were sitting in rows, and since I was an invited of Gérard Bliss, I was on the second row. And there were about 100 rows behind. And he started by the last row. And he was moving with attendants, and he had a peacock feather in his hand, and the Shaktipat was done by touching each person, or for some people, he would raise the hand and blow his own breath in the mouth or in the nose of the person. So we were supposed not to turn back. We were to sit straight and wait for our turn. But the curiosity grew because I started hearing very strange noise behind, shouts, chanting, movements. So at one time I was so curious, I break the law, I looked back, and I saw people jumping, shouting, chanting, crying, doing asanas, doing some form of breathing as soon as this Swami gave the Shaktipat. So I observed whom was doing what, at least some people, saying I will go and talk to them afterwards. And then the stress increased because it was coming nearer, closer, 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 closer. And that was my row then. And I was at the other end of the row when it started on the left and I was on the right. And the more he came close, I was so stressed. And then he came and he just gave me a little touch with his feather, peacock feather. I was so disappointed. I was invited by Gérard Blitz. I was practicing yoga for so many years with Desikachar and so on, and so on, and so on. Very, very frustrated. And then he started talking in Marathi, and he was translated into English by his lady disciple. And then somebody was translating the English into French, but I was able to follow perfectly the English, not the Marathi. And so that was the story of the Maharaja who wanted to know what was Vairāgya. That is the topic today. And he tried. First thing, he gave all his belongings to poor people, to his friends, and so on, so that he owned nothing, but he was not satisfied. He didn't feel it was Vairāgya. So he gave his kingdom, but that makes no difference. And then he decided that the only thing that was left to give away his own life. So he asked his attendants who stayed still with him to create a funerary pile to burn his body. Fortunately, the Maharani, his wife, was much more intelligent than he was, and she has perfectly understood what was Vairāgya, so she stopped him and said, "You cannot give your body away. This does not belongs to you. It belongs to nature, it belongs to your father, to your mother, but not to you. This is not the way to reach Vairāgya. Look into yourself, the only thing you own." And then suddenly I felt a split from the top of my head to the bottom of my trunk, and right open in the middle of my chest, there was a hard kind of nut. That was my ego. And I was shaken to the roots. And then in my mind, the thought came, fantastic, thank you so much, but I am not going to be your disciple. It's not my way. It's not my path. And it was with tears of gratitude, but no regret. It lasted for many days, this state. And I keep a feeling of gratitude for Muktananda as I feel deep gratitude for Krishnamurti, but it is not my path. So you have to find your path. It's not something that you find right away. You do some mistakes, you do some sinuous type of different paths before you reach your own path. But this is so fundamental. All the paths are good, but only one path is good for you, and you have to find it yourself. And it is nowadays mostly a mixture of many different things, not just one thing, not like in the past where you knew only one thing and therefore it was your path.
François?
Yes.
So you said that you didn't want to follow Muktananda's path because you realized that he wanted to give his life.
No.
No.
No, it was not my path because it was not my path. I cannot explain why. It was like an inner feeling that came out instantly. Thank you. I owe you a very great understanding, let us say, realization rather, but it is not my path. I am not going to follow you. I am not a follower.
Even though you had this split in yourself, then the realization of this nut in your heart, which was your ego.
Yes, and in spite of that realization, and in spite of previously something different but similar with Krishnamurti. Maybe 2 years before, I was listening to Krishnamurti in Sarnen, in Switzerland, so intently that suddenly all sense of me disappeared. There was total attention and presence, but nobody. And I went out of the tent, and it was fantastic to see the trees and the mountain, and so with no barrier. And my children were not my children, but they were beautiful. And my wife was not my wife, but she was beautiful. And so many people around, they were all beautiful. And life was beautiful. And this lasted for at least 1 week or more. But again, it was a step on my path, but it was not my path. My path, your path, is your life, the totality of your life. The good, the bad, the evil, the saintly, the parts that you understand and the parts you don't understand, everything is your path. And it is made out of all these encounters, meetings, understandings, and so on and so on. This is what I mean by your own path.
There were just gurus on your path.
Nah. There is only one guru, not gurus. And the only guru is consciousness.
Mm.
Consciousness, not the individual consciousness. Consciousness which is both within each one of us, which is who is rather than which, who is creating each one of us and destroying each one of us, who is creating and destroying the universe, who is playing a fantastic game, but we are only incidents on that game, but at the same time, we are at the same time this consciousness. So the path of each one of us is unique. There is no other Elizabeth in this world like you are, or other François like I am, or any one of you like you are. And this is so important to realize that as we are, each one of us, with all our limitations that we believe to be limitations, we are indispensable for the totality. We are like windows through which the one consciousness sees everything and enjoys everything and loves everything. So when we start, I love, I don't know if I can translate that in English, a saying of Rumi, the Sufi master. He says, love is the bridge between you and everything. So any path that can lead us to this understanding. Only love is the bridge that links us to everything. Because fundamentally, this consciousness is love. It's not hate, it's not limitations. But love's limitations. Love the different identities that it creates endlessly, genealogically, but in each genealogy, each individual is different, even twins. If every cell in the body is different from all other cells, though they may have the same functions. So this extraordinary creativity recognized by the Sankhya and yoga philosophy, they say, ahamkara, the nature fabricates individualities, fabricates differences endlessly. There is no one thing similar to any other thing. And that is the fantastic creativity, again, of both consciousness and its outcome, which is nature, which is prakriti. The next one, and the last one about Vairāgya, is the 16. Tat param purusha kyatehe guna vaitrishnyam. When this total, oh yes, I forgot to translate something of the 15 first. This Vairāgya is called Vashikara Samya. Vashikara means that which masters. Samya, that which knows together. Word by word, it means Gnya, knowledge, Sam, together. So what is it that which knows together? It is the entity made of, which we could call body-mind. Without body-mind, ultimate consciousness cannot know anything. It knows only through our body-minds. We are like windows, as I said, on a very variegated landscape that is our stories, our birth, our suffering, our rejoicing, our joys, or failures, and so on and so on. We are the windows through which the one consciousness knows the diversity of not only human experience, but the experience of the cosmos in its totality, and so on and so on. So the Vairāgya is the fact that helps to master this samnya, this organization that creates knowledge, body-mind, and therefore helps to come to that state of desire, of a quiet and silent mind, because the mind interferes. As you know, the problem of the consciousness is that it is obliged to see a mind and through minds, and the mind can be completely tranquil and therefore open and therefore translucid or transparent. The window is clean. Or the mind can be, through rajas or tamas, perturbated and gives a wrong picture, not so much of what is outside the window, but the reflection of consciousness within the mind is thwarted. And therefore, the one consciousness believe, I am this mind, I am this limited human being. And then we have the problem of Samyoga that is described in the second chapter, but I'm not going into it now. So the 16, and I will end with this, and if you have other questions, then we'll have time to do it. Tat param purusha kyatehe guna vaitrushnyam. We have seen vitrushna in the 15, absence of thirst. Vaitrushnya means extreme absence of thirst. Due to what? Sorry, Tat Param first. The sublime or supreme, you say in English also? Highest form of total absence of thirst, of desire, comes from kyatehe, the realization of purusha, of what is consciousness, and come from, now I'm modifying because I made a mistake. I start again. The ultimate form or the supreme form of Vairāgya comes from the realization of what is consciousness and from total absence of thirst for the gunas, total absence of thirst for experiences, because the interplay of gunas in human life is felt like experiences. Whether they are pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, they are all the outcome of the interplay of the gunas. And we are seduced, we are hypnotized by experiences. We want so much to avoid painful experiences. We want so much to reproduce pleasant experiences, that we are always looking at the experience and never at that which sees the experience. So our sight is always outward, never inward. And so long as any form of experience has this power of attraction that prevents us from looking within, we are not in the total Vairāgya, we are not in the total state of yoga, because we are still convinced that this world, this life, has something to offer that is essential, that will fulfill or sense of need will end our fears, will take us to that feeling of love and peace and joy that we profoundly desire, but we never find through any experience, or will find it only momentarily. And therefore, this supreme Vairāgya is the key, more than Abhyāsa, but they are linked together because the practice will erase the obstacles that prevent us to reach that state of desirelessness. All the other proposals that we find in the Yoga Sutra are rooted in this Abhyāsa Vairāgya. That's why I think it's a very good topic. Not easy to propose and teach and help people to come close to it. But I think the European Yoga Union has to choose difficult aims to raise the level, to help us to become, to come closer to the deep understanding of yoga, to a deep understanding of yoga. I'm sorry for the English, it's not my native language, so I have some difficulties. So especially a language is easy when you use it constantly or often, but it's not the case for me just now. So any questions, remarks, objections are welcome.
I have a question for you. Is the Purusha and consciousness the same?
So in the Yoga Sutra, Patanjali used the word Purusha more than Atman, for instance. Purusha, grammatically speaking, means the male in opposition to the female. Prakriti is feminine and Purusha is masculine gender. But the nirukta, the meaning which is not revealed, in Europe we will say esoteric meaning, is Puri Isha. Purusha is Puri Isha. Isha means the Lord. And Puri means the city. The city with 9 doors. 2 eyes, 2 nostrils, 2 ears, 1 mouth, 1 anus, and 1 genital organ. 9 openings. So it is the body. Body and mind cannot be separated. Body is the gross part, mind is the subtle part of the body-mind together. So Purusha is the inhabitant of this structure, and in the global culture of India, usually it is called Atman, self. Some Vedas, some part of the Vedas or the Upanishads say the heart is the cavern in which is hidden the self. So Purusha is synonymous of Atman.
Okay.
And Atman and Paramatman in India, the self and the supreme self are one and the same. The image that we can give is the room in which I am is a limitation of the space. But the space within this limitation and the space outside the limitation of this room is one and the same. There is no difference. The air is different. It can be polluted because if I don't open the window, the air will become polluted. But the space remains the same. In the same way, the consciousness within us and the total consciousness the one total consciousness who is creating, maintaining, and destroying everything, are one and the same. The only limitation is the one of the body-mind. It is a spark of the same consciousness, but the spark is exactly the same as the total consciousness.
But so Purusha is the same and that. Then Atman, then it's the same as Brahman also.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then it's, yeah. So Purusha equal Atman equal Brahman. And the consciousness
As Chit.
As Chit. Okay.
Chit is
Yeah.
consciousness in Sanskrit,
Yeah.
which we have to differentiate with Chitta. Chit is consciousness. Chitta means that which looks like consciousness. Like if you look yourself in a mirror and you see your image, you can say, this is myself. But no, yourself is not the image in the mirror. Yourself is yourself. And your image is in the mirror. Chitta is the mirror in which reflects is the mirror which reflects Purusha.
Okay, so basically Purusha is not the consciousness, but the Chit is the consciousness.
No,
Chit
Purusha
has the...
No. Purusha
Yeah.
and Chit are synonymous, the same.
Okay, great. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
but Chitta is not consciousness. Chitta is a mirror in which a wrong image of consciousness is reflected, according to the yoga and Samkhya philosophy. Like if you look at yourself and say, oh yes, I am conscious, this is a wrong reflect of consciousness in the mirror of your mind, because you cannot see consciousness. Consciousness sees you, but you cannot see consciousness. You are nothing compared to consciousness. I am nothing compared to consciousness as the image of consciousness in the mind. Do you follow me?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
So let us say François feels very guilty. He has done very wrong things in his life. He has cheated. He has lied. He has been brutal, and so on, so on, so on. The image of myself is only a product of the mind. It is a thwarted image of consciousness within the mind. But that which is behind this thwarted image of the mind, or before this thwarted image of the mind, is the real consciousness, which cannot be seen because it is the seer. The seer established in itself, as says Patanjali, has no means to see itself in the mirror of the mind, and the mind cannot see, even less see, the nature of consciousness. And the understanding can come with the, how can I say that? The sun. The sun has no need of a light to enlighten itself. It is the source of life. Consciousness has no need of mirror to see itself. It is itself consciousness. But to see something else than itself, it needs the mind, and the mind is thwarted because of the past, and therefore gives wrong information about what is consciousness as an image in itself, until through yoga, Abhyāsa Vairāgya Bhyam, or Ishvara Pranidhana, the two main suggestions given by Patanjali to reach yoga, this thwarted image is erased, the mind is silent, and then it is a mirror that reflects truly the nature of consciousness to consciousness. It's a bit complicated. Sorry for it. Well, you are very courageous to listen to this. Any other question? You can love yourself only if your mind is silenced and you have ended any idea of reaching something. So being desireless, not only with regard to mundane aims, but also with regard to spiritual aims. Just live your life with love.
I have one more question, François.
Yes.
In which way the point of view of Patanjali is different from Krishnamurti's point of view?
I would say the story of Patanjali, I don't know, because nobody knows exactly whom he was and so on and so on. But the story of Krishnamurti we know. A young man, I don't remember, 12 years old, with his brother, taken away from his mother, who died because of that. Because the father was working in the Theosophical Society, he had no choice but to say yes to the Theosophical Society. And the Theosophist raised Krishnamurti as an English gentleman, nice shirts from Savile Row, and so on, so on, so on. So Krishnamurti was cut from his tradition, the Brahmanic tradition, the Vedic tradition. And he rediscovered the essential of it, like Buddha did. So Buddha found his way and his teachings different from, but of the same nature as the Vedic tradition and teachings. And Krishnamurti broke away from all traditions and through that met his own tradition that he didn't know. Do you agree with me?
Yes, of course.
Well, it's not so obvious. Because when I listened to Krishnamurti, I was so convinced that he was right, totally. I didn't understand his own path. His own path is understandable through his story, his history. And the Theosophists were very strange people indeed. He broke away with the idea that he was the Messiah, but in a way, he became a world guru. Not a Messiah, but a guru.
Yeah.
So the funny ways that consciousness, the one consciousness creates for us human beings to reach the unreachable, to understand the non-understandable.
I am wondering, Patanjali doesn't talk about the love. I think Krishnamurti talks about love, but Patanjali, I don't remember. Maybe I don't remember.
Well, he doesn't use the word love because there is no such word really in Sanskrit. You have prema
Yeah, prema.
and you have maitri. He used the word maitri. In the Ekatattva Abhyāsa, in the first chapter, when the mind is so disturbed that you cannot find the way through undisturbed mind, he suggests that you follow one path. And the first path he suggests is Maitri, Karuna, Mudita, Upeksha. Love, friendliness also.
Friendly, yeah, because
friendship.
I have the translation when it's translated as friendliness.
Yes, but it's not friendliness, friendship.
Yeah.
You know, in life, you don't have 2 friends or 3 friends or 10 friends. You have one friend only. Friendship is as unique as love. When you say, oh, I have many friends, it is not true.
Yeah.
Montaigne had only one friend, La Boétie, and La Boétie had only one friend, Montaigne. A real friend is unique. It's like a soul that is, a self that is made of the same stuff. So the word Maitri can be translated as friend, friendliness, or friendship, but it can also be translated as love. That is the only occurrence, according to me, in the Yoga Sutra about this. Simply because love is not possible as long as the kleshas are active. Thank you very much for your patience. Is there any other question or comments or objection or critique or positive or negative? Because one learns from one's mistakes, and I'm sure I've done many. I want to do I want to say too many things, so maybe some things remain a bit clouded, but you can listen again to the recording, and maybe you can always ask me questions with a mail, for instance. If you want to I will write my mail on the chat, so it's easy to find it. I don't know if one can copy from the chat, but yes, I'm sure you can.
François, if you want, I can mention it in the
Yes.
mail in which I sent the link to the recording.
Very good. Yes, thank you, Luc.
Okay, I will do it. Yes, yes.
Be happy in your lives, in spite of all the turmoil around you and within you. And happy, maybe not the right one. Be peaceful is better. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
Thank you very much, François, for this very profound and inspiring lecture. And also thank you for the participants for their interest. So the next session is scheduled on 18 October at 18:30. The theme will also be Abhyāsa and Vairāgya, and the speaker will be Daniel Stéphanie. And but François will give another lecture in French this time on 25th October on the same on the same theme and at the same hour, 19 hours. Participation in this session is free, but if you want, you can donate a contribution to the EOI via the website, and there is an option donate if you want. So I wish you a very nice evening.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, François, and all of you. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Namaste to everyone.
Thank you.